What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/StoriesAboutKevin. Alrighty, this first story is called, Kevin is a Master of Politics. In my circle of friends, I have a guy who qualifies as some sort of part-time Kevin. Most of the time, he is a normal guy, but sometimes he stuns us with his stupidity. Some background. I know Kevin from secondary school, real school in Germany, so about for 12 years now, and he is the only one from his original group of friends who never went to university or cared about higher education and is working a dead-end job in finances. Most of our common friends' work has to do with politics in one way or another, so our conversations often revolve around current political events, and of course Kevin always wants to participate in those conversations. The problem, Kevin has never read a newspaper or even watched the evening news. He is completely unaware of current issues, and his most used sources are Facebook posts and the headlines of news stories, not the story itself. He literally just reads the headline and thinks he knows everything you need to know. Kevin once got enraged by the fake news. We were driving to the airport, and since it was rush hour, I was busy driving, while he waffled something about the evil media. At some point, he started to tell me about one of our common friends. He didn't mention the name since he wanted to protect his identity, works for the ZDF, second German TV, a public service broadcaster with one of the biggest newscasts in Germany, who had told him that the German government and the CIA are in control of the news, and probably the Zionists also. At this point, I looked him dead in the eyes, first time I didn't look at the road, and said, "Kevin, you realize that I work for the ZDF. Also, I am the only journalist in our circle of friends, so he couldn't have meant anybody else." He needed some time to process the information, muffled something about, "Yeah, I know," and went silent for the rest of the journey. He often ends conversations or discussion with, "Yeah, I know," and often tries to convince people he just fooled you or played a prank on you. For a few weeks, Kevin became a climate change denier for 2 weeks. The climax of climate change denying was at the evening of a birthday party we were both invited to, so we drove together. This time he drove, so I was actually able to listen to his thesis about how climate change was a hoax constructed by the solar power industry to kill off the German economy. I calmly explained to him that he was talking nonsense, and then we decided to stop for a quick snack since both of us haven't eaten anything and drinking on an empty stomach is not a good idea. So we stopped at a local Turkish kebab shop, and Kevin started again with his climate theories. First, relatively harmless with his theories, that all the climate scientists just forgot to calculate the sun and water into their equations, but then started to talk about how Merkel orchestrated the climate lie to give Branen Muselfikan, roughly translated to brown Muslim lovers, but I can't really translate the racial slur, an excuse to come to Germany. He said this in front of the Turkish shopkeeper, who refused to serve him after this. Kevin's explanation was, "The guy's probably racist who doesn't serve Germans," despite the fact that I was served and looked as German as you can. Pale, blue eyes, blonde. Monday after the party, he sent me a bunch of articles with the message, "Read and learn," wink. At first glance, the articles seemed like the normal climate change denying stuff, but I was stuck in a train on my way to work, so I looked a bit closer at them, and it turned out these articles are designed to catfish climate change deniers into reading them and then convince them that climate change is a real threat. I just texted him back if he even had read the articles, and he confidently answered that he literally had studied the articles and is now even more convinced that climate change is a hoax. When I confronted him with the actual content of the articles, he just replied, "Yeah, I know, it was just a prank." After this, he became a strong advocate for environmental protection and denies that he ever denied climate change. 2 years ago, we went to a local mini golf course because we were bored, and one of us suggested we could go there because they have cheap beer there and the lake is right next door. When we arrived, Kevin started to get a bit grumpy and didn't want to play mini golf anymore since it is a game for little children, because children are also mini, so mini golf must only be for kids. And he felt embarrassed by us because we played a children's game. After some minutes of convincing him, he finally gave in and played along. Well, he slurped along and screwed around on every course course to show us how boring the whole thing was. He also drank like one beer, like half a liter, per course and was wasted when we reached the 11th hole of 18. He then proceeded to call some other friends and loudly proclaimed how boring everything was and that we were so embarrassing since we played a game for babies. At one point, he called one of his friends a kid diddler. Well, he screamed it because he assumed he probably want to pick up little girls with his mini golf skills for his small peepee. What a pun. After we were done, everybody had enjoyed the evening. Besides his constant drunken nagging, the folks he called met us because we wanted to drink a few cold ones at the beach. One of them asked why we even went to the mini golf course and whose idea it was, since Kevin hated it so much. Well, it was Kevin's idea, and he was quite eager to get mini golfing until we arrived. Since he is working in finances as an accountant, he is very confident in his knowledge of the market. So he started to buy shares of big companies. Two of those companies were the Deutsche Bank and Commerzbank, both huge banks in Germany with a history of violations of German, European, and international laws, and at this time in huge problems with the law, Panama Papers and cum-ex scandals. And Kevin thought it would be a good idea to buy these shares before the investigations were over. Some friends studied economics, and BWL also works in the finance sector, but in way better jobs than him, and repeatedly warned him not to buy shares before the investigations were over, but Kevin didn't listen. He never spoke about the loss he made and gets really defensive if you ask him about his shareholds. But a friend suggested Kevin had a total loss of around 5K. He also bought bitcoins a few days before the crash, despite the numerous warnings. Of course, Kevin is quite the hit with the ladies. He's not bad looking, not at all, and the guy is really fit. After all, he is a seasoned climber who climbs over 7,000 meters. For real, this is not some sort of from him boastfulness, but oh boy, his social skills are kind of, well, lacking. He is somewhat of a nice guy, Kevin, so most girls are not really eager to go home with him. During the birthday party of his twin sister, he flirted with some other girls from his sister's handball team. So I was not present at this party since his sister and I don't get along, but another friend was present, who presented us with Kevin's hottest moves. First, he talked to some of the handball girls until he exclaimed, "I like handball, but not women handball. It is too effeminate, and the only good thing about it is that I can see their, cats." Needless to say that the chat ended there. After this, he talked to another girl, and apparently it went quite well until he offered a drink in exchange for fellatio. The girl was either disturbed or thought it was a bad joke since drinks were free and Kevin was a bit drunk at this point, but after she declined his generous offer, he called her a freaking floozy and spilled his drink over her. His sister threw him out after this, and he lost his smartphone on the way home, something that occurs regularly. This is the only reason why he only owns less than €100 phones, because he lost most of them in a matter of weeks. Kevin loves motorcycles. He's not allowed to drive one since he never got the required license you need in Germany, but this fact never stopped him from buying one. Kevin had the brilliant idea to buy a broken bike and restore it himself, since he thought it would be cheaper. The problem is that he knows jack dookie about engines, and not one of his friends, including me, could help him either since nobody knows much about this stuff. He tried to hire someone to repair the bike, but it was too expensive, so he decided to leave the thing to rot in the garage. But Kevin would not be Kevin if he would have just recognized his mistake and tried to resell it or something like that. No. He bought a second bike, which was also broken. Now he has 2 broken motorbikes and can't park his car in the garage anymore. He constantly tries to sell them to one of us, with little to no success. My favorite story is the one when he actually joined a political party and helped them campaign in our local community. A few months before the general elections in Germany 2017, he joined the AfD, or Alternative for Germany, an alt-right party. Something no one was really happy about, but okay, and claimed he had donated around €2,000 to the party. Since we live in the same community and he was responsible to hang the election campaign posters, and since he knew I am a huge opponent to the goals of this party, he thought it would be hilarious to put all the posters nearby my house. I literally woke up and opened my window and was greeted by 2 AfD posters. So for the whole month until the elections, I had to look at those posters and couldn't really do anything about them since removing election campaign posters would be illegal. But Kevin didn't bother to remove the posters after the election was over. In Germany, election posters are only allowed at a certain time before and after an election. Otherwise, it is illegal and the local party has to pay a fine. Since Kevin didn't remove them and nobody else felt responsible for the total of 6 election posters around my house, I called the local authorities and they removed the posters 3 months after the election, and the party was fined with 6,000 euros. Apparently, the cost of removing the posters by local community employees. I mock Kevin to this day that his party donations were probably used to pay off the fine that he caused. After this, he tried to convince us that he actually never joined the party, had nothing to do with the election posters, and of course, never donated any money to a party. The fact that he proudly had shown us the check with the donation and I was present when he had to put up the election posters didn't change his new narrative. This post does not include most of the bat guano stuff he did when he was actually drunk, but I need to continue working for our Zionist reptilian overlord CIA director Merkel, or whatever people think these days. Maybe I'll write down other stuff Kevin did, if there's demand for it. This guy's something else. Alright, so he's alt-right, and that's, in and of itself, is pretty freaking gross. And then he's also, a neckbeard of sorts. Not the traditional neckbeard in terms of appearance, but the way he treats women. Ugh. I guess Islamophobia goes in with the whole alt-right thing, but, oh man, this guy's quite the character. And you gotta appreciate the OP here, because he's willing to be friends with this guy, despite his numerous, shortcomings at being a decent human being. You gotta respect someone like that. There's gotta be some redeeming qualities, right? This story's called, Today I Fudged Up by Making My One-Night Stand Breakfast. I got out of a bad relationship a few months ago and only recently felt good enough to get out of the house again. This was my first ever boyfriend and he turned out to be a piece of crap, so I was obviously a bit hesitant. But some old friends from high school were visiting my town and asked if I wanted to go on a bar crawl with them, and I figured screw it. It's not like anything will happen other than getting drunk with some pals, so why not? At the first bar, we run into a group of guys from my university. I had seen some of them around but never spoke to them before. One of my friends decides she's gonna force me to get out of my shell and drags our group over to talk to them. I'm extremely quiet, like weirdly quiet to most people, so I end up sitting in the corner of our booth and not say anything, just drinking and feeling awkward. Well, one of the guys in the other group, let's call him Adam, is also being weirdly quiet. So my friends and his friends, who are already tipsy, decide to make things as awkward as possible by making us play truth or dare, except we have to drink when we don't want to answer something. There are a lot of personal, sexual questions neither of us want to answer, so we end up drinking quite a bit. And by the time we're done at the first bar, Adam and I are on a whole different plane of existence from everyone else. And it turned out we had a lot in common, and he was pretty cute, and we were goofing around and laughing the whole time. I started to get butterflies in my stomach, and not just from the alcohol. Adam has my exact sense of humor and is really sweet and kind. We wander off and start having deep, drunk conversations about feeling left out of things and how annoying it is when people say crap like, "Can they speak?" I tell him I'm walking home and he offers to walk with me. Ooh. I know where this is going, but I'm drunk enough that I don't feel nervous. Plus, I feel like I have a genuine connection with this guy. Our friends are wolf whistling as we leave, and instead of being embarrassed, I feel weirdly proud. So we get to my place, talk and smoke for a bit, and do the deed. I wake up earlier than him and decide I'm gonna make him a nice breakfast. I want to impress him and show him I like him, and everyone likes a good breakfast when they have a hangover, right? So I sneak out of bed and make scrambled eggs, French toast, and sausage. I prefer almond milk, so I use that for the eggs and French toast. He wakes up and tells me I look just as cute sober. At this point, I'm convinced he's the love of my life. He sees the breakfast and gets excited, and I'm like, yes, my plan worked. I'm gonna get to his heart through his stomach. We eat and everything's going great for a few bites. Then he makes a weird face and clears his throat. His eyes start to widen and he asks what if there were nuts in the bread or something. I say no, but I used almond milk. He jumps out of his chair and says, "Call an ambulance right now!" I'm freaking the freak out. He's wheezing and stuff and looks absolutely panicked. I ask if he has an EpiPen and he shakes his head no. So I call an ambulance and tell them he's having an allergic reaction and paramedics come and haul him off. This happened last weekend. I have not heard back from him since. I found his buddy and confirmed he's not dead. I guess accidentally triggering a severe allergic reaction does not lead to romance. Oh no. Good job. I mean, I would say you should have asked him beforehand, but honestly, how does that come up in conversation, really? You know, they're asleep and you're trying to do a nice thing, and who makes French toast with almond milk? It's just an unfortunate set of events, and if the guy can't get over an accidental, honest mistake when there is an obvious connection, then is he that worth it? Because he doesn't seem very understanding. You know what? If you almost killed me, but it was an accident, I'd be cool with it if you felt bad and you said sorry. Because, you know what? I appreciate the sentiment of wanting to make me a lovely breakfast, and it's your first time getting back out on the horse in the pasture, something saying cliche, insert here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.